Welcome to DFC on the Green. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Chris Etherington, taking a look at the U.S. Open on DraftKings this week. A loaded field as usual for a major. Pretty soft pricing as we usually kind of get on DraftKings. You can kind of do whatever you want, which always makes things interesting.
Yeah, like you said, it's going to be very interesting to see what type of roster constructions people will go to. Um, you can easily pick DJ at the top, and there's a couple cheap guys who we'll talk about, but that I feel might be a free square. It's hard to say a free square, but in these situations, you might have to go 100% on one guy, maybe two, and hopefully that'll help you to win the big contest this week. But yeah, overall, it's literally just pick your best six guys that you like for the week, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think as far as ownership goes, especially in the Millie Maker on DraftKings, I think ownership is going to be fairly spread out.
Yeah, if you look at the guys over 10K, I'm hearing some talk on Jason Day. Some people think that he's going to win, whereas others they're saying DJ will win. And then you got Rory up there. You got Ricky, who's usually always popular, and I think Spieth is we're finally going to see Spieth at like sub 10% in ownership. I think the Memorial was like the last sort of straw for people playing him. Something is just not right with Spieth with his putter. He's just not making anything. So if you're making like say 20 lineups in the Millie Maker, I can see Spieth being like your third guy as like an option just to see what happens. Like put him in like 2 or 4 lineups and roll a dice on him. But outside of that, I think I'm just going to go to Justin Thomas. His win percentage the last 18 starts is unbelievable. I think going back to the PGA, he's won like 4 times in that span. And yeah, he's basically in the top 20 in the field in all the stats that I'm looking at this week. So I'm just going to go to him and fade the others.
Yeah, for me, I'm with you. Like it's Thomas and DJ here, the two guys that I'm looking to use the most in this range. McIlroy was kind of an interesting cut. I think if I was building more lineups, I'd have some interest in Rory McIlroy just because he is a guy who I think will kind of go overlooked a little bit because you have DJ right there in price and Thomas right below. I can see McIlroy and Spieth being the lower owned guys of this group.
Yeah, like I said, if you're doing any more than 20 lineups this week, Rory or Spieth or both really would be a nice little anchor as an option after like your top 2 guys. And then from there, like I said, Fowler's going to be popular as always, especially now with his recent engagement to his girlfriend. And Jason Day as well, he's going to be popular this week. So I'm going to fade those 2. And I think overall, I'm just going to pick Thomas and just go almost all in on the $9,000 guys.
Yeah, and that's a range this week that's pretty strong, and you can make a case for really all 4 of them here. Let's start with Justin Rose, 9,900. Expect him to be somewhat popular. I mean, in really good form, and I mean, you expect him to be popular because he kind of checks off a lot of boxes here.
Yeah, almost like JT. Rose is also having a really good stretch. If you look at his recent form, going back to the Tour Championship, he's won like twice, and he has something like 8 top 10s in that span. So the fact that he's less than 10,000, he should be the most popular out of this group. Probably next to Brooks Koepka, who's going to be the next popular guy. But yeah, if you look at Rose's stats, I mean, he's third in the field for par 4 scoring, sixth in the field for approaching the green. And yeah, he has a decent history here at the U.S. Open. I mean, he's won the U.S. Open back in 2013. So I think for cash lineups, it makes sense if you want to fade everyone at the top and just start your lineup with Rose and go on from there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I know, but you and I both like Jon Rahm a lot this week. A solid guy off the tee. Also, par 4 scoring stands out here with Rahm. Another one of those guys where he's just in this 9,500 range where you can kind of fit a couple of them in and feel pretty good.
Right, and just recently I looked at the weather. It does look like late, early tee times will have a slight advantage with the wind being down a little bit on Friday morning. And Jon Rahm is right in that wave, that late, early wave. So I think at 9,500, the way he's playing this year, it's hard to argue against him. I think he's going to get it done. I think this is the tournament for him to win. I'm pretty certain I'm going to be using him and the one and done. So, yeah, Jon Rahm at 9,500, he's pretty close to going 100% in the lineups that I'm making this week.
Let's talk Tiger. As always, a guy who's going to draw some interest. Has been playing relatively well. 23rd at Memorial, 11th at the Players. His last 2 tournaments. I think we see reasonable ownership, but I don't think it's going to be as high as what people expect.
Yeah, some people are saying that his ownership might reach 40%. I'm sorry, I can't see it. Yeah, he's going to be popular. He should be over that 20% mark easily. But the fact that he's sandwiched between Jon Rahm and Koepka, who should be more popular than him, that would suppress Tiger's ownership a little bit. And then going back to his last tournament at the Memorial, the scary part is everyone saw it, that his putter definitely let him down that week. He lost almost 8 strokes in putting for the week, and he was something like six shots off the lead when it was over. And I mean, if he had made all those 5 footers that he had on the weekend, he would have easily won that tournament, and then everyone will be on Tiger because he won it. But it might be a good thing for him that he didn't, and not too many people will be on him. And yeah, Tiger is also in that wave where it's late early. I'm going to play a lot of Tiger this week.
You going back to Koepka here?
Usually my rule of thumb is never play the defending champion. It's just he's going to have a lot of media attention because he's the defending champion. I know he's playing okay at this week's FedEx St. Jude, and yeah, I think with his price, he's going to be one of the popular guys, probably reaching that 30% mark. I would love to play him if I was playing more lineups, but I think at this point I'm just going to have to fade and hope for the best that he doesn't do well. But I'm going to have to take a stance and just fade Koepka.
We get into past 9K. I mean, this is where there's just a ton of names still, and this is kind of where things get a little bit easier, I feel, as building lineups go. Let's talk Matsuyama real quick. 8,900, T13, T16 over his last 2. I think he's finally healthy. You're starting to see the driving distance climb up to where it was last year. I think he's an interesting GPP guy, as he always is to me. But I mean, a guy who doesn't, he scores pretty well, scores well on par fours. He's top 10 there. I think he's an interesting option who's going to get overlooked a lot.
Yeah, with him being in between Koepka and Stenson, I can see it as well. Where for tournaments, I don't mind plugging in Matsuyama. He has like 3 top 20s here at the US Open the last 5 years. And then he actually was a runner-up last year to Koepka. So the fact that he's showing signs of life again after his injury is a good sign. He's in the top 10 in the field for par 4 scoring and also for strokes gained around the green. So, yeah, has a pivot play off of Koepka and even off of Stenson, who's going to be popular. Yeah, I don't mind that play at all.
Let's talk Stenson here. I mentioned to you before, like, so right now I'm pretty close to like 100% on Stenson. Just checks off basically everything that I'm looking for this week, and then the fact that he's under 9K just seems like kind of a steal.
Yeah, when you look at the stats this week and you see, well, how could he be near the bottom end of the field for driving distance? Well, that's because he uses his 3-wood a lot, and he doesn't really need to use the driver that much because he can hit his 3-wood as far as most guys can do it with their driver. So, and he's just a ball striking machine. Like I said earlier this week, he's 4th in the field for approach the green. He's also 4th in the field for par 4 scoring. And then, yeah, he doesn't have the greatest of histories for the US Open recently. But he does have that 4th place finish back in 2014. So for him to be less than 9K, it's really hard to fade a guy who's really good at ball striking. And then he has that extra gear if he needs to hit it longer, if need be. But he's so straight and long with his 3-wood. But I think that's going to be the club for him this week that might get it done for him.
Are you fading the poor form Sergio Garcia here?
Yeah, who knows what's happening with him? You would think that he's the guy to go to for majors. He's always up there, but recently he's just not playing well. So yeah, I just need to do a full fade on Garcia. Normally I would go not all in, but at least close to 50% in my lineups with Garcia. But this week, yeah, I had to fade.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just with Matsuyama, Koepka, Stenson, Nicholson, Reed, like all these guys have just been in so much better form of late. I feel like it's kind of a neat. Like if you're building obviously a ton of lineups, you can feel free to use him. But there's guys in better form that I'd rather go with right now.
Yeah, if you look at, for example, Patrick Reed, like he's still in form even after the win at the Masters. He made the cut at the Players, played okay there, and then he made the cut at the Memorial, finished top 30 there. And then if you look at his history at the US Open, he finished, top 15 last year. So, I mean, with his price being at 8,500, with his stats, I mean, he's 1st in the field for par 4 scoring. I kind of like Stenson, maybe not all in, but probably 2/3, maybe half of my lineups. I'm going to be using Patrick Reed a lot. And then for Phil, I think for DraftKings, I'm going to fade. He's going to get popular. He needs to win the US Open to complete the Grand Slam. And I think a lot of people think that he will get it done because of his history at Shinnecock. He finished runner-up to Retief Goosen back in 2004, I think it was. And then 95, he was like in top 10 there. So, yeah, people will play Phil. He was 28-1 last week, so I put some money on that just so I have some ease of mind if he does play well and ends up winning. At least I got a piece of it that, okay, I got something.
Well, I mean, at least Mickelson, we joked, I think, last week, Mickelson will have a decent week and then finish runner-up here next week because that's what he tends to do.
Yeah, and it looks like that he's now just playing the usual, just create some shots that he would use for the US Open. Yeah, he made the cut this week at the FedEx St. Jude, but it looks like he's near the bottom there at the leaderboard. So if that's the case, then maybe, today he's just going to create some shots for this week, and we'll see if he actually completes the career Grand Slam and finally wins the US Open.
So as the rest of these guys here, I think this is where you kind of tend to get these three names next, I feel like will be a little bit lower owned than the three that we get to next. But Brendan Grace, Bryson DeChambeau, Bubba Watson, all in this lower 8K range. All guys I think will be not as popular as the names that we mentioned or the Fleetwood, Casey, like Scott Noren kind of tier as well.
Yeah, if you look at these three guys, of the three, I might pick Grace, especially if it becomes more of a links style play. And from the looks of the weather, it might be like that this week. So I wouldn't mind going to Grace, especially if it's more of a grinders type as well. As far as DeChambeau and Watson, I just can't see it with those two, especially Bubba, with his mind the way he is and the way he's playing pretty good this year. He's won twice, I think, but I just can't pull the trigger with Bubba, knowing that Fleetwood's $100 cheaper than him after finishing fourth at the US Open last year. You kind of have to go to Fleetwood at this point, being at 8,100 for cash and even for tournaments is, I wouldn't say a no-brainer, but with the way Fleetwood's been playing, he finished seventh at the Players. He finished top 20 at the Masters. So, yeah, I think Fleetwood for cash on that one and for tournaments, and I think I'm just going to fade Bubba and DeChambeau.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing that. I think I definitely prefer Fleetwood over that group, and even like a Paul Casey or Adam Scott as well. I will say, I think if you're also building multiple lineups, that both DeChambeau and Watson are interesting GPP pivots. DeChambeau is more kind of a recent form play here. Bubba Watson has a couple of key stats that play pretty well that I'm looking out for, but with you building only 5, 6, 7 lineups here, I don't know if they're going to make the first cut.
Yeah, if you're building like 10 lineups or less, like for me, I'm building 5 this week, and you really have to make a stance somewhere, same as like the top, where you kind of have to fade one of the more popular guys, and it's a little scary. And down here, it's almost the same situation, but I think I'm just going to look at the numbers in front of me with Fleetwood and just roll the dice on him. There's some people saying that they think that Fleetwood might win this week, and I kind of agree with them. His form is just too good to ignore. And yeah, it's just Fleetwood seems to have found that second gear to be a really, really good player, and I just don't want to miss that boat of him winning his first major. I think it's coming soon.
I'm with you. Paul Casey, I feel like always a safe cash game guy. Of course, you can play here. Top 20 birdie or better. Obviously, a guy who's solid. Strokes gains eighth and approach the green. I don't mind Paul Casey at 8K. We talked about him like he's never a guy that I feel like has enough juice to kind of push it into a top 5, but always a guy who's probably going to hover around top 20.
Yeah, if you look at his history at the U.S. Open, he missed the one cut, but in the 5 years. But outside of that, he finished basically in the top. He finished in the top 30 last year, and then he was basically in the middle of the pack years before that. So that's pretty much where you're going to get out of Casey, I feel. He won't hurt your lineups, but he's not going to do anything fancy. I can't see him finishing inside the top 10 this week, but again, he might make the cut. He should anyway, but maybe finish in the middle of the pack around T30, T40, something like that. At 8,000, yeah, I'm fine with that. That'll be a nice price for him.
And then you got Noren as we start to go below 8K. We'll talk about Scott right now, but Noren's the guy that I keep finding myself consistently plugging into lineups because of that price, and I feel really good about it too.
Yeah, Noren, I always compare him to like Fleetwood a little bit. Like Noren was close to being inside the top 10 in the world, I think, not too long ago. But recently, yeah, he missed the 2 cuts out of the 3. He did make the cut at the Players, so that is a plus. Yeah, as far as up here, like around upper 7,000 range, I just can't pull the trigger on Scott or Noren. I think Leishman might get overlooked. I might put Leishman in a lineup or two. If it gets windy, then I think he's the player to go to. He seems to always play very well in the wind, and then he always seems underrated. It seems like people just don't play him. There might be a few weeks where he will get popular, but this week I just can't see it getting up there like 15, 17% at the most for Leishman. But yeah, I just can't pull the trigger on Scott or Noren.
So yeah, you and I differ a little bit because I'm kind of almost all in on Noren here this week.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but looking at the history of the U.S. Open, Noren missed the last 3 cuts here. Obviously, that'll drive his ownership down. Leishman has made the last 2 top 30 in both. Leishman is basically in the top 30 in the field in 3 of the stats that I'm looking at this week. So just look at the numbers there in front of me. I just have to go to Leishman instead of Noren.
Outside of those guys, we get into Cantlay, Simpson, Schwartzel, Molinari, Kuchar. I mean, any of these guys stand out to you here?
Cantlay a little bit. I mean, he has no history at the U.S. Open, not in the last 5 years anyway. Stats-wise, he's basically in the top 30 in the field, and basically 4 or 5 of the stats that I'm looking at this week. The only problem is everyone else is seeing the same thing, and they think that Cantlay might do something this week. I mean, he has 2 top 10s in his last 4 starts, so I might just like Leishman, I might put Cantlay in a lineup or 2, just to feel at ease. But that's probably it for me in this upper tier in the 7,000 range.
I found myself kind of dropping down a little bit. Like I think Berger's an interesting GPP guy in this range of 7,600. You and I were talking about him a little bit before recording. Not a guy who stands out, all that well in the stats that we're looking at, but who's still, he's not poor. He doesn't have anything that really stands out in the other way either. And I think he's interesting because he's in a position, I feel like, where he could get over the hump this week if he plays well.
Yeah, just like you said with his stats, I mean, he's either average or just above average in all the stats that I'm looking at for the week. And then if you look at his history at the U.S. Open, I mean, he's made 2 of the 3 cuts in the 5 years that he's played at the U.S. Open. Basically finishing top 40 in both of the times that he made the cut. So at 7,600, I get kind of like Paul Casey, where you don't expect the guy to do much, but he won't hurt your lineup. He'll make the cut for you, but probably finish, I would say, in the top 40, maybe top 50 range. Like, he'll get you the placement DK points for you, but outside of that, I can't see him doing much this week.
Outside of those guys, I mean, who else are you looking at in the 7K range? I know anyone else before we get to like Shane Lowry, who I know you like here this week.
Yeah, outside of Berger, I mean, Sander is somewhat interesting, but he's just not playing well lately. But he might be a good tournament option. I think a lot of people will go to Tony Finau this week with his distance. He's 13th in the field for driving distance, and then he actually finished in the top 15 here at the U.S. Open back in 2015. So I don't know, maybe for cash, Tony Finau for sure, and then for tournaments, possibly Sander. Maybe he will find something and will finally get the form that he had towards late of last year. Yeah, outside of those guys, I really can't find anyone that I really like around here.
No, I can't either. Like, I start to drop down a lot. You mentioned Lowry at 7,200. There's a couple guys in this really low 7K range that stand out here.
Yeah, Shane Lowry is one of the guys that I might be saying that he's basically a free square. Just plug him in. Don't think about it. It's hard to say that, but if you just, look at the numbers. I mean, he's made, including the FedEx St. Jude, he's made 5 straight cuts in a row. And then for his history at the U.S. Open, I mean, he's made the last 3 cuts outside the 4 starts at the U.S. Open. And then in those 3 starts, he finished in the top 10 twice. Wanted to be a runner-up finish to Dustin Johnson back in 2016. So at 7,200, I mean, his stats don't stand out, but with his recent form and his history at the U.S. Open, it's almost hard to ignore. That you just kind of have to plug him in and not think about it and build your lineup around him.
Anyone else down here? I mean, you have a few names that I feel like that are interesting. A couple of stuff. I mean, Hadwin's a guy that I don't mind this week. Definitely a cash game guy. He's another one where I feel like he's probably your 5th or 6th golfer that you can toss in for a value. Probably doesn't have a shot at winning here this week, but a guy who won't kill you and offers up some decent value.
Yeah, he said Hadwin. The only thing that scares me with Hadwin is that his distance is not there for this course. But I mean, he's in the top 20 in the field for both par 4 scoring and for approaching the green. So that is a plus for him. And he has been consistent throughout the year this year. So I don't mind that play at all. The one guy that I always seems to go go back to is Chesson Hadley. Hadley, I mean, if you look at his stats, he's basically in the top 20 in the field for approach to the green, also for par 4 scoring, and he's actually in the top 10 in the field for proximity. So I really like that for Hadley at 7,000. I mean, if you look at his recent form, he has like 6 top 20s in his last 8. So with him having no history here at the US Open, hopefully his ownership won't be too high. Might be around that 10 or 12% mark, if anything, because of his recent form. I kind of like Chesson a lot this week for both cash and for tournaments.
Then below 7K, 3 guys stood out to me here. Vegas 6,900. Brandon Steele, who is 6,800, I know he cut out to you as well, and then Gary Woodland. Those were the 3 names that popped up for me below 7K, and then also Charles Howell as well. But mainly those 3 here, which I feel like is interesting because those are kind of the guys that I'm looking to use when I am going over 10K and over 11K with picking players.
Yeah, probably the most surprising guy for me would be Charles Howell at 67. I mean, he's actually in the top half in the field for driving distance. You wouldn't think that when it comes to Charles. And outside of that, I mean, he's top 20 in the field for par 4 scoring. So for cash, I can see it for him. For Brendan Steele, also for cash, he's the other guy that I like this week. He's like Shane Lowry. He's the guy that I'm also thinking of saying that he's like a free square. Just plug him in. Don't think about it. It's mainly because of the numbers that are in front of me. He's made basically back-to-back top 15s at the US Open. If you look at his stats, he's like 8th in the field for off the tee. He's 12th in the field for driving distance. And he's top 20 in the field for approach to the greens. So normally people down here don't reach 10% in ownership or higher. It's usually spread out at this point. But I can see Steele. I can see probably Gary Woodland a little bit be closer to that 10%, mainly because a lot of people have recognized those names. And with the stats, they're just going to flock to those 2. And Charles Howell, again, people just seem to plug him in and cash games as well. And again, I kind of like his stat, the fact that he's in the top 50 in the field for driving distance. That's a nice plus for a guy that's less than 7,000.
It's not like Brendan Steele's ever let us down in a major before.
Yeah.
That Masters left such a bad taste in my mouth because he was, I believe he was basically this cheap too.
Yeah, he was. I don't recall saying that he was a free square.
No. I'm just giving him a time.
No, that was his only missed cut in his last 9 starts. And yeah, he hasn't played well at the Memorial or the Players, but I mean, it's hard to fade the guy when he's this cheap and his stats are still good. And look at his history at the US Open. I'm just going to throw away that Masters letdown. And I think he missed a cut at the Masters by 1 or 2 shots too. Like, I kind of remember that a little bit. But yeah, at 6,800, you just hope for him to make the cut. And then if he does the same thing the way he's been playing the last 2 years at the US Open, he'll surpass value with his price for sure.
Yeah. Anyone else you want to talk about here?
The one guy that sort of stood out a little bit, he hasn't played much at all, I don't think, this year. People might recognize him last year at the Greenbrier. But Sebastian Munoz at 6,700. I mean, he's in the top 30 in the field and driving distance. And he's pretty much average all around for the other stats that I'm looking at this week. So, again, not too much recent form, but the fact that he's in the top 30 in the field for driving distance, he's going to be a nice pivot option, I think, outside of like Thornberry, who's playing well this week at the FedEx St. Jude. People will be watching that and seeing him, and we'll probably play him as well for the US Open. So, yeah, I think Munoz is a nice pivot play for tournaments this week.
Certainly. Who do you got winning this week?
Okay, outside of Tiger, I want to say Jon Rahm. How's that?
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I'm going to go Stenson. Stenson's my guy to win this week.
Yeah, I just think Tiger will be working on his putter since the Memorial, and everything else is up to par. And yeah, I think this is the week where he's going to get it done. So here's for the 10th time saying that this year. So yeah.
I mean, he's been so close. It really has been the putter that's been the only thing that's really let him down.
Yeah, he finished runner-up at the Feldspar, where if a couple putts went his way, he would have claimed that one. And then again, he lost almost 8 strokes at the Memorial. And if he was just putting average, then he would have easily won that tournament as well. So everything else, other than obviously off the tee for him, but everything else seems to be where it should be. And then you just know that for the past week or so that Tiger was working on his putter at the course at Shinnecock. So yeah, I think Tiger's going to get it done, and then my other guy will be Jon Rahm.
Yeah, I like Rahm. If I had to take a dark horse here, I think it's kind of tough to pick. I don't know if you can even call anyone a dark horse these days, but I do like your Lowry call.
Yeah, I think Lowry is going to be very interesting this week. Like I said, made the cut at the US Open the last 3 years. He was the runner-up at the US Open in 2016. Plus, he's made the 5 straight cuts. So, yeah, I do like Lowry a lot. As far as my dark horse, kind of like in that same folk where you can't really say dark horse, but at 8,100, Fleetwood, I think, is going to be the guy.
Like that. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com this week. Optimizer up ready for the U.S. Open. You'll have your article in this week as well. A little bit more about your favorite cash and GPP plays. And tee off Thursday. You mentioned a little bit of weather. Early, late would be the ways to go here.
Yeah, being Sunday morning, obviously it's going to change a little bit. But Thursday, it looks like it's going to be roughly the same throughout the day. Around 14, 15 miles per hour with gusts reaching up around 21. And then Friday morning, I think, is when you're going to see some scoring. Only 6 miles per hour in the morning with gusts only up to 12. And then Friday afternoon is pretty much going to be the same as Thursday. 11 miles per hour with gusts up to 21 for the afternoon on Friday. So with the low winds on Friday morning, that's why I'm saying that late early will have a slight advantage as of right now. But as I'll look back into it come Wednesday night and see if there's any changes. If there is, then obviously I will tweet it out. But yeah, I think because of the wave, that's why I really like John Rahm this week. He's in that late early wave, and if the weather holds true, then yeah, he should have a nice run this week.
Oh, I'm with you there. So be sure to keep an eye on that. Check back in, and we'll see you guys next week.